Welcome everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Hermanussen. I work at Lukien, and you know me probably as Knifecore on Twitter, if you follow that. And today I'm going to talk to you about Compile Domain Model, which is a code generation framework and offers a strong typing solution to working with your Sitecore data. Somewhat similar to the presentation before. One big difference with GlassMapper is that GlassMapper is an actual mapper, so it maps fields to an object, where Compile Domain Model is a wrapper which just abstracts away and you construct the classes with the actual item, so you can still access the item, which can be useful if you want to fall back to the old way of doing things if you need to. There's a disadvantage to that, because unit testing is not something that I've taken into account when making Compile Domain Model. So that's a little bit of a thing if you need to do that really well. There are some ways around that, but you can't do it as nicely as you can with GlassMapper. Okay. In short, you can generate code for templates and also predetermined locations in your content tree, which can be useful if you want to do some configuration from Sitecore, perhaps well, anything that you want to expose in a fixed location that might be useful, and functionality can also be exposed at that location, which I'll show you later. And also a part of the thing is that you can validate the contract between your code and Sitecore. So that's a basic thing that I've put some emphasis on. When you have generated your code and you've deployed it somewhere, you want to be certain that the code reflects what's in Sitecore. So the templates that are in Sitecore, they may have different fields, they may have, or the fixed tree locations, they may have different locations at that point. You want to validate against that. So you want to be certain that that matches up, because if it doesn't, your code might break, or you would have to do a lot of null checks to prevent that, and who wants to do that? Okay, so some of the settings, which I'm going to go into detail about. There's a central way in Sitecore in Compile Domain Model to start configuring your domain model, what classes exactly you want to generate code for, and what fixed paths. And some of the settings that are globally arranged are to enable the validation on startup. So when your Sitecore solution starts, it immediately starts validating and writes something to the log if it's not correct. Perhaps in a development scenario, you want to throw an exception immediately, because you want to know directly that it's not up to date. You can set a flag for that. Also, when a useful feature is remove dependencies. If you're in a scenario where you might not have the ability to add the Compile Domain Model DLL, perhaps when you make a Sitecore module, for instance, you don't really want to put that dependency on your code. So you can remove the dependencies, which also removes the validation, because you can't do both. But and even if you want to move away from Compile Domain Model completely, if you're not satisfied with it, you might want to put the remove dependencies thing on there and do a phased sort of removal of that code. Something that I've added not too long ago is the platform mode. That's a feature that's useful if you have a multi-site solution, or you need some sort of a separation between different parts of your code, some sort of a modularity. I'll show you in a minute how you can separate that, but there's also a flag that you can select, and then you can actually separate the code into different projects. I'm actually going to demo that as well. So there's a configuration file specific to this module. You can use it to configure anything else. You may want to add something to your validation logic at startup or at any point. Perhaps you have some other things you want to extend. So let's get to the demo. Actually, Mike just had a lot of beer in his presentation, so I'll provide the football. The next World Cup coming up in an iCal format, which is a calendar format. I'm going to import it. I'm going to show you how to do that. And then I have a small demo site that displays all the data. Okay. So, actually I'm going to demo that first. Oh. Let's not spoil anything yet. Let's go to Sitecore first. What was that password again? So what I was talking about when I talked about the global settings, you can find those in the system folder under modules compiled domain model, and on the settings item here you can see that you can set all these different things, and also you can set a namespace. That's going to be the base namespace for when you generate your code. And under that global setting you actually have a few settings that you can use to make sure that your application remains modular. So in this scenario I've not yet turned on the platform mode, but I will. And you can see that there's a domain model and a paths item, and there's also a very specific World Cup 2014 sort of equivalence there. This can be used to separate the code that you generate. So you can generate code for the platform as well as the separate module for the website. And let me see what these actually mean. There's two different types of settings you can put under the global settings, and one of which is the domain object sets. So you make a set and you configure what code you want to validate. So what sort of templates you want to validate and generate code for. There's also a way of handling the multiple inheritance problem, which is inherent because you're using Sitecore, which supports multiple inheritance, but C# doesn't. So when you generate your code, you need to take care of that. You can do it completely with interfaces, but I've chosen to do it in a slightly different way. I generate the standard templates, if you will, and also contributing templates. So any contributing templates are not full members. They can't actually become objects, but others, there will be interfaces generated for them, and the regular domain objects will implement those interfaces. So that's how the code generation works. Okay. So the fixed path sets, which I just mentioned, are the sets in which you can sort of configure the different paths in your system where you want to generate code for, so you can access them at any time you want. And they are also validated so that if someone renames it, it'll actually keep working because it falls back to the ID, which is also generated. But it'll also give you a warning so that you can be certain that if something is renamed, perhaps we need to update the model, or perhaps we need to do something else, rename it back, for instance. There's also a concept I call relative fixed paths. And the idea behind that is that sometimes you'll have a structure within your tree starting from a selective point. So, for instance, you have a multi-site settings where every site is somewhat similar, and you want to share those different settings. Then you might want to use a relative fixed path. You can set the different elements that are beneath the settings thing, and then generate code for that. And then you have to, at runtime, join that somewhere. So, for instance, on the home page item, you can set a relative fixed path to the settings, and then add every individual setting so that you can access it from code directly. I'll demonstrate in a minute. Actually, let's do that now. So the domain model is configured here for the platform, and you can see that I've selected several templates, and the regular templates that are here will actually become full-blown classes, and the ones that I've selected here, they are all postfixed with base. They get generated as interfaces and also some static classes, so that you can define extension methods, so that they almost become full members of your model. Okay, and then the paths, you can see here. Actually, it's probably better if I take this one. I've selected the website item here as a fixed tree location. And that is the website item in the dictionary. You'll notice that on the left there's a, oh, it's probably not really visible here. Maybe I can make it a bit smaller for a moment. Okay, there's a gutter thing on the left here, and it displays what parts of the tree are configured as fixed paths. And also, if you go into the templates, I've defined a template structure for the demo application already. You can see that that you can find out in which domain set or fixed path set the template is configured to be rendered, to have some code rendering for. Okay. Okay, so when we're generating code, I use a fairly simple way of determining what template to use. This does not rely on TDS or anything. It's not T4. It uses standard ASPX or ASCX files, and you can actually drop in your own ASCX file as a template to generate code from. And if I select here, there's in the development tools the code generator right there. Is that visible? Yeah. I'll maximize it again. You'll see that by default the regular domain model generator.ascx is selected. This is really what you probably will be using most. It generates all kinds of code, but there's some ways of adding to this. You can actually generate other things if you want. Here's a SQL views generator. I'm just going to demo that quickly. Let's see. What it actually does is generate a set of views that for every template that you have, it'll generate a view, and then you can see the field values as columns. So you can easily, I'll show you how it works. Let me see. This might be useful if you want to do some reporting maybe, or I don't know, troubleshooting if you're looking for what the problem is. Oh, it's not working. Can I just do localhost? That works. So on the master, copy and paste this, and when it's generated, I can go into the views. I can see that, for instance, if I want to see all the events, well, there are none now, but we'll see in a minute that they'll get filled up. But you'll see that all the fields are there, or just some of the standard fields, and most of or all of the ones that are in the selected templates. Those fields will have generated columns. Okay. Actually, they are at the end for this particular template. Title and description, UID, location. Those are all fields. Okay. So I've created a little demo app to show you how this works, and I'll just turn on the platform mode because I've generated in two separate projects. There's the platform project and the website project. And the platform project will have the shared code, if you will, the shared templates that you can use, and the website project will have the very specific templates and fixed paths that are selected for your individual website in this case. Okay, let me see. So I've created a little function here where you can add a calendar. I think I have two of them defined here someplace. Let me just get back to that. I lost the... Does anyone know how to display the notes field here real quickly? Oh. No, that's not it. I think I have it someplace. Oh, right there. I'll have to type it in manually. There's also an iCal that I created for the last user group meetings. All of them are in there. Okay. Now if you'll notice, there's a command here that I configured, and I'll show you in a minute how it works. And if I click it, then you can see that all the user group meetings are all imported, which works quite nicely. And also if I add a calendar for the World Cup, because that's basically what we're going to be doing, I'll add it actually somewhere else. I think I can add it here. It's quite similar, so maybe copy paste it. Oh, wrong field. Here we go. Here's something that I want to explain later, because this goes into the relative fixed path that I use. I can also click it here. Or did I actually save it before? Not sure. Here we go. And actually what I didn't explain before was that I take all the entries from the calendar, and I also look at the locations, and I create them here. So how does this work? Let's go to the platform. And the commands, the SyncCalendar command. Can everyone see okay? Okay, good. So let's go into the execute, or actually the SyncCalendar, which actually does the heavy lifting here. this is basically where we start. The item wrapper create wrapper is a static method that you can call, and then you can that you can pass in an item to, and then it generates the resulting object that is a generated class. And then I can just access all the fields. So if I use completion, you can see that it has several accessors, several properties. And let's actually load the... Oh, I'm using a library for the iCal parsing. So I load the iCal from a URI that I've configured. I've actually configured that through a fixed path. So let's go into that. Oh, I haven't configured that through a fixed path. I think it's... Well, let's see. The URL is obviously on the calendar itself, and then it loads the events. And then when what I do is I extend the class, the generated class, which I've put, the generated classes I've put all in the domain model.gen.cs. So when I generate the code, I copy paste it into this file, and then I can make all sorts of extensions. So I'm really big on that. I like to take the classes that are generated and extend them with functionality that is useful. So in this case, I have a calendar class generated, which is specific to the calendar, and it has a relative fixed path configured here. So how does that work? The relative fixed path that I've configured here is an actual location in the tree, and starting from there, all the descendants I generate code for. So if I have a branch, which is a perfect example of how to use that, if I have a branch and I go to the calendar structure here, you can see that these are configured. Oh, you can't actually see that, but they are configured here as relative fixed path, and that means that there's a class generated for this, and I can join at that point. So any class or any item below that is also generated within the namespace. And how that works is for every calendar the same structure is being used, so I can overlay those. So when I make a property on the calendar class, I can say, okay, well, create a fixed path, or a calendar fixed, which corresponds with this. And then when I pass in the item, which is the calendar itself, then all the children are accessible through that path. So if I take this fixed item here, you'll see that it has events and locations below that. Okay. So for this command, I called the calendar event class here, and I've created a specific constructor there that I pass in the iCal event and a sort order in this case. And then you can automatically create that. So I pass in the parent item to the, and I create the item here. So I create a new calendar event item on the location of the fixed path. So I take the calendar, then fixed, then the events, then I take the item wrapper itself. I can always access the item, which you can't do with Mapper, but you can with any wrapping framework that you use. And you can add an item, in this case with a name and a template ID. The template ID is generated. I also have the static fields for any field that you have there. And then I have an edit context. I can just set these different properties to whatever I need and save it. Okay. And here I use it again because what I do is I take the calendar fixed again, and then I can access the locations. So we've accessed locations and events from this part. And actually, because you have to be certain that those are there, and you can't validate them at the startup because you're joining at the moment that you're using them, you have to do that during runtime, which is why the fixed here has some logic to get the validation messages. So you validate at runtime. You can actually do that to make sure that the events and locations items are actually there, and you'll get a warning in the logs if they're not. Again, this is because you don't want to be null checking all the time, even though the structure below that item might be different. You need to check for that. There's a strong emphasis on validating the contract between your code and the Sitecore items this way. Okay, so this created a nice list of events and their locations, which are linked. You can actually select the location here. And the same goes for the World Cup. So any game, any match is in a location, some stadium in Brazil, I suppose, and they're linked and they're imported here. So what I've also done is this takes care of the platform part, because I've generated the calendar and the locations, and now I want to do something specific to this website. And what I'm going to do is extract the teams from those names and also have items for them, so you can generate, so you can access them, and so you can get pages for all the teams with all the locations and such. Okay, so I've also created a command for that, which basically works the same way, although it uses a normal fixed path, which is actually validated at runtime, because you can see that let me see, actually no, I'm lying. I wanted to talk about the dictionary with that. I'll come back to that later, sorry. Actually now I want to iterate all the events and then extract the team names and link them. So what I do is, if a team doesn't exist, well then I create one, and I have a custom implementation here as well. You'll see that I have a domain model.gen.cs here as well. So in platform mode, you have to select what code you want to generate for. So in this case, for this particular website, I want to generate code for these last two items. And in the case of the other mode, in the platform project, I want to generate code for these two sets. So because I selected the platform mode, if I now refresh the code generator, you'll see that you'll get this message instructing you on how to do that. So the interface within Sitecore doesn't provide that, but it provides instruction on how to do that. And what I generally do is just make some shortcuts for these, and you'll see that if I generate the platform code, I just select what things I want to generate. The core is an implicit sort of thing. You don't need to configure that, but it contains the classes that you need anyway. And the domain model and the paths are the other ones. And I also have one for the website. And you'll see that this contains these two different object sets and fixed path sets. So what does that look like? Generated code. See if I can show you a class diagram. So basically, what it generates is some interfaces. The item wrapper is the one that you can use for any type of item. Even if it's not mapped, you can make an item wrapper class. Just call item wrapper create type wrapper. If there's no type available, it'll just create an item wrapper. You will not have any fields on that. If it is a mapped class, then it'll become a contributing template, or it'll actually be a, it'll be a domain object. These are two other classes I was looking for. Item wrapper and domain object. They have corresponding interfaces right there. And you can see here that on the platform level, I have a calendar event, a location, and a calendar. All the things that you need to create the calendar itself. And there's a contributing template thing. By convention, I always make sure that I have a class that any page has. So anything that has layout, eventually, I want it to have an iPage based class. So it has a title, for instance. It also inherits from title base. But I might want to do anything to extend for all pages. That's why I can select this static class, and I can create a method, an extension method for the iPageBase interface. So any page that I have, whether it's an inheriting template or anything, I can always call getURL or anything that's page related. So this way you can always extend exactly where you need it to be on the templates. Now, perhaps I can show a class diagram from the website. You'll see that there's a page specific to the website, a theme, which is also a page, and the home page, which is of course also a page. And here's the fixed classes as well. I've created a dictionary. Let me see where the dictionary is. All right, in the fixed paths. So this is a way this is something I use to in this case, implement a custom dictionary. I've created a fixed path at the location in the tree that you can see there is a fixed path. So this one. And up until this point in the tree, I can access from any location. So I can say, let's see, system. Oh, right, I can actually go there directly to the website fixed. That was used here. But I can also take if I go to the website fixed, then that is in the namespace of the dictionary. So this is still a relatively short fixed path that I'm using. Not a relative fixed path, but a relatively short regular fixed path. So if you have a very deep thing, if for instance I were to say, let's make this thing a fixed path, I don't know why, but then I could access it by saying system, workflows, analytics testing workflow, draft, etc., etc. Or you can import that namespace and then access it directly if you like. So the advantage of this is that I can have the dictionary fixed here. And I can actually extend that. I can say, let's make a method there so I can access it from anywhere if I can access the dictionary. So it's very tightly coupled with the content tree that you have. Okay. So I showed you the command, but I didn't show you how it works, or if it works even. So the command uses the home page. Again, this is a simple extension. If I have a home page, I can just say, give me the current home page, and it'll just figure it out for you you just have to implement it once and extend the normal homepage template. So any item that you have that has the homepage template will get this functionality. For the homepage, that's probably not going to be very much, but for anything that you'd like, for any theme that you want, you can add that sort of thing. So I have this command. Take the home page. I'll get the calendar because the home page has a field calendar that I can select. And let's take this one. And now the home item actually exposes this command by this button that I've created here. I've also done some other configuration here, but you might want to place this configuration somewhere else. Use a relative fixed path or a regular fixed path, whichever you need. The relative fixed path is more suitable for a multi-site environment, and the absolute fixed path is more suitable if you have something that you want to use through your entire solution and not have different for different websites. Okay, so click this. Oh, did I not save it? That's not right. So maybe it's caching or something. That's better. And now it's extracted all the team names from the matches. It actually also extracted the final and quarter-final winners of the half-final winners and the quarter-final winners. And you can see that all the matches are selected there as well. With using some relatively simple code, or at least not very much code. Okay, let's publish this. I'm completely leaving my my presentation behind here. So let's catch up with that. Right. So CDM allows you to generate code based on your templates and content structure. It also allows you to validate at runtime using the validator that I'll show you right now. I think I skipped that. Wait. There's the actual validation thing here. It'll check whether everything's consistent, and if I change something, let me see. What would be a good way to show you this? I think if I change that, this here. Wait. Oh, well, that's not right. Is that still caching? It should give you, I assure you that it works normally. Should give you a message there. Anyway, I'll skip that for now. Okay. So it'll give you validation at runtime normally. doesn't require TDS or anything. Doesn't require Visual Studio. You do need to copy paste some code here and there, but in general, I don't find that to be a big problem because it's just get the page, copy paste, compile. Let's go. If you want to, you can even leave out the compiled domain model DLL itself if you need, and it's completely open source. So on to the MVC part. I've shown you the calendar and different options for the World Cup, so the extraction of the teams. So let's create some MVC stuff and actually show you. Actually, I think I'm a little short on time now, so I might not be able to show everything. Let me go through this quickly. So basically what I do is I create a typed rendering model. You can just plug this in. I think I have it. Oh, it's configured obviously in the compiled domain model configuration itself. Oh no, it's not. It's configured here. Okay. So the MVC get model pipeline, I've implemented this, and it actually takes the type from the view rendering. I'm just going to go into view renderings by the way for now. I'm just going to skip controllers. So if I have an events overview or maybe the team details, do I have anything? Oh no, the Jumbotron was the right one. This one has a data source. The other items I've actually don't have a data source. So I take the data source template and I select I've selected the content block template to be the data source template for this view rendering. So if I go to the home page, you'll see that there's a Jumbotron on there. It's this item right here. I've set some associated content, and because I've set the data source template, I know that that template, which is the Jumbotron or the content block template, I can use that as a model. So if I go to the Jumbotron view here, you'll see that the content block class is right there. What I actually do is I inherit from the standard iRendering model class that Sitecore provides to do the normal view initialization, but I've extended it so that it automatically populates this using the create typed rendering thing right here, and that allows you to access the model directly. So if I do model dot, it actually exposes the data source item, also the page item as a wrapper, anything else that the rendering regularly provides. So I can go to item, and then I have all the properties, all the fields that are on this content block item. So for instance, title. Now that's not going to work very well normally because you won't have page editor support. So I've created an extension method similar to the regular Sitecore way of doing things. So normally you would say Sitecore field, and you can have a field name here. But I like to do some type checking, especially when I'm when I'm still developing and renaming things. I want to do that compile time. So I've created an extension method that takes an expression tree, and that figures out the difficult stuff for you. So it actually checks what field is being used based on the property that you use, and then it evaluates the rest of the expression right there to figure out what item to use. Okay. So I can now go to the website. Now you'll see that this has one content block right there, and if I select a different one, the alternative, it'll have a different content. Now what's important to note, I think, is that if I were just displaying a title here, I don't know why the rest is not now failing, but looks a bit weird. It's important to note that you can make this smaller. So if a content block extends an iTitle base, for instance, I can just say iTitle base. Now I can't access the description anymore, I can just access the title. So this way you can make it as big as you need it to be. So the CS_HTML can implement for something very specific, but you can also make it implement for something that's a lot less specific. That's basically just a view of a title or a view of a description or a few of these things. Anything which is in your generated tree, your class tree. Okay. I'm not sure why that failed, but perhaps I can fix it if I go back here. Maybe, but I think everything's published. Oh, I'm not sure if I did publish the calendar, because this one's still working. Excuse me. No. Oh, that's a shame. That's great. I'm not quite content with that actually, but here we go. So here's a quick list. I've used Twitter Bootstrap to make it nice and responsive. And you can see that with all the matches here, you can click to a country, for instance, and see what, well, this is a bad example, of course, Brazil being the home team, but let's say Cameroon. You can see in what locations they are playing. I can actually see some more details there and click through to the location, and it'll show you a nice map where the location is and all the teams with the dates when they're playing at that location. I think that's all about what I have time for. So I hope you enjoyed it. I just have this final conclusion here. I think CDM can be useful if you want to have structure and maintainability in your Sitecore solution. I think it's not a very big threshold to take if you want to put that into your solution, and you can use it easily with Sitecore MVC. So that's about it. Any questions? No questions? Okay, thank you.